There we go. Okay, so you're probably hearing a little bit of buzz around AI, all this ChatGPT and all this terminology. Who here has played with ChatGPT? Is anybody? Okay. So the main thing you're going to get from this presentation is really an understanding between the hype and reality. We're going to try to boil it down to the business basics so you can better understand what all this terminology means, so you can better separate out that marketing fluff from what really actually adds value. We're going to do that through a few examples of real-life ML use cases that we've done here in Alberta. And then we're going to really dissect what ChatGPT is and how you should think of it and how it might create impact for your business. I promise this. This thing keeps on going, right? Good. What's the? I probably don't need the mic here with a small room like this, but we need it for the presentation.
I'm gonna go.
Yeah. This is as technical as we're going to get. So the term AI actually is almost this meaningless buzzword. Many of us in the industry actually wish the term was never coined. Think of AI as this umbrella term for a variety of kind of subcategories underneath. Come out here and I'll move around. You can take this way. When people are talking about AI, usually what they're referring to is ML or machine learning. So machine learning is when we build software, when we build an algorithm that can adapt without being explicitly programmed. And again, keep in mind, what I'm gonna say here is directionally correct. I don't think there's any PhDs in the room. Art might call me on some of this stuff, but I'm just trying to be directionally correct in this so you have a better understanding of it. Essentially, you take a bunch of data, you throw it at this software, and you're looking for patterns. You're basically trying to make predictions using this software. The real fun area of machine learning is deep learning. So autonomous driving and a bunch of the big breakthroughs are all based upon the deep learning. Think this is synonymous with an artificial neural network, very loosely based on how the brain is formulated and put together. And all the tech for this was actually developed in Canada, in Toronto. So the Nobel Prize was actually Geoffrey Hinton, Yoshia Bengio, and Yann LeCun. The Americans made all the money, but it was developed in Toronto. A special area of AI that you should know as an Edmontonian is reinforcement learning, or RL. This was actually, the guy who wrote the book, literally, on RL is Dr. Richard Sutton, and he's the reason we have an AI industry at all in this province. Think of this as, essentially they train these agents, they call them, to kind of almost optimize. It's almost playing games, so when you hear about winning chess or in poker, it's really good at this type of game theory because they create these artificial worlds in which the players will learn. And we're trying to apply those to a business context. And then there's two other areas, computer vision, so anything with graphics, natural language processing, anything with text. We're going to come back to NLP because of ChatGPT. So in some ways, this is like a Russian nesting doll where you've got AI, ML, and deep learning. But in reality, the whole field is like this overlapping Venn diagram. In many instances, you need lots of data. So you talk about like that big data term. Data science can involve analytics and a whole bunch more than machine learning and deep learning. And the industry is moving so fast that all these areas are intersecting. So you're using deep learning, computer vision used to be completely its own area. Now you're using deep learning techniques across the board. You don't need to really know about any of this. Just understand that AI, that people refer to, is essentially machine learning. It's a subset of machine learning. And there's all these branches of it. These are all different tools in the toolbox that should be thought of to basically solve a business problem. AI today can't think. It is simply making a prediction on a very specific area. So when we have an ML engineer and we bring in, we say, I want to make this type of prediction. I want to predict when a bank loan is going to fail. We gather all the data from those bank loans that failed, and we look for patterns and correlations. But it's very, very specific. Sometimes it can explain why, sometimes it can't. But the core element here is very specific predictions. If you ever talk about your gut, you ever talk about making that educated guess, those are often problems that ML can take on. Okay, so it's just programming, right? There's a big, big difference between all of software and everything that's been automated to date and machine learning. If you know the rules, just program it. Right? Chase, at RBC, if they know exactly what's going to make someone, not pay back that loan, you would just put that into a system. And really, every business around the world has been doing this for decades, right? If we think we understand it, we put those rules in, and we get an output. That's just programming. That's just automation. Machine shops, there's 150 machine shops in town with lathes, so you got, CNC machines, things are programmed in. That's just automation. But if you don't know the rules, it kind of inverts this entire paradigm. If you don't know the rules, you've got a bunch of data. We're using machine learning to try to find those patterns and correlations. So if you have it's a lot more expensive to do this whole ML thing. So if you don't need to do ML, you shouldn't. And if you can use the most simplest type of ML, it'll cost you a whole lot less. It doesn't necessarily need to be cutting edge. You've all heard the Netflix and Amazon and Google examples. There's a bunch of consumer applications. I want to get to some real business-to-business, some kind of real-life, blue-collar applications of ML. Essentially, UltiML, my company is, think of us as like a blue-collar AI company, right? We're just going to traditional industries trying to solve real business problems. Any people involved in safety here, or safety? There's someone. I know I'm pretty sure there's some. So I'll keep these relatively generic. I won't say which plant this is at in Fort Mac, but at a plant there was a near miss. So a near miss is when there's almost a safety incident. You need to document these. This is a very serious event for any oil and gas company. The near miss happened because in this plant there was corrosion on this insulation, on the cladding for pipes. So what we did is we went in with an engineering firm. Our partner was Kleinfelder that went in with the operator, and what they would have to do in one of these instances, almost like a full shutdown and then a full inspection of the entire plant before they could reopen. So they had video of the entire plant. We used our computer vision. Our data scientists went in and tried to find those instances, tried to predict where they should inspect. And in doing so, it saved thousands of hours of time. I think in this case, like just in year one, it was like $1.2 million of annual savings, and cut off thousands of hours and kept the plant running, or got the plant back up and running that much quicker. I love this example here as well because it's not like we necessarily came in and really fully understood like you could use computer vision for this problem. It's just there was a business problem, and keep this in mind, come back. Don't let the tech geeks tell you to just do AI, right? Solve a business problem with data. Here's another example in the insurance space. I know Lloyd Saad is represented here. So this is, there's a ton of paperwork in a lot of industries, healthcare and insurance especially. So in this algorithm, this is in the claims process. So think of it when there's and again, I'll try to be relatively generic here just to keep this somewhat anonymous, but there's not that many workers' comp companies in this province, so you can probably guess. But so as a claim is made, there's an instance in workers' comp, like a claim agent needs to go through and take a look and understand should that claim be paid out. And so in this case, we've taken a look at all the past claims and said which ones don't actually need any intervention, which ones we pretty sure can just be paid. And so the claim comes in, hits that algorithm, and so we call this a touchless claim. Immediately just goes through. So the human never even needs to intervene. it actually is the best thing. It's great. It saves money for the company, and that person who's been hurt gets paid quicker. Really good example of AI where no one actually gets hurt in this. The claim agents can actually spend time with those that need time on the case. There's very complex claims that AI can't handle, and by having more time available, you get better service. I know this isn't the most exciting screenshot. You notice I talked about the blue collar company. It's not like we're doing a ton of really, really fancy robots and things like that. In real life, again, we're talking about very specific instances. Supply chain has been upside down for everybody over the last few years. Supply chain is always upside down for big, massive enterprises. Tens of millions of dollars spent on stuff that, frankly, you don't need. So in this use case, we went in with a large energy company, you'd all know the name of, and we're using natural language processing to extract out data and try to predict how to optimize that procurement process. So it's saving time for that procurement team, making their life easier by giving them an additional tool. We actually think the economic impact of this could be in the 8 figures per year in terms of reduction, in terms of things they don't need to buy or reduced inventory costs. And lastly, one of my favorite child right now. So as a business, we work with large enterprise, but we're also a venture studio, so we spin off new companies. We've got a new company in the legal research space called Jurisage. We bought out the largest independent set of Canadian case law and essentially used our machine learning to categorize every case in Canada and are using that to change the way the legal research process, if you sit down with a new lawyer, essentially the process, or the workflow for that, essentially looks like 100 browser tabs open because they're looking for all these different cases to cite. So if we can optimize that process, we think that we think that if we make a big enough dent in the tech, that Thomson Reuters is just going to come by and give us a big bag of money. But there's a little bit more to the business plan than that, but really there's not a whole lot of legal innovation in this space. Thomson Reuters and LexisNexis essentially own the category.
May I interrupt?
For sure.
This is perfect, and I didn't know you were into that. So my question is actually with respect to data integrity. Okay, because I'm a lawyer. In this space, I can speak just from experience that I know that most of the data that you're drawing on comes with almost a seal of quality, because a lot of the cases have emanated obviously from the different courts, the different tribunals, the commissions, that part of their mandate is actually to make their cases posted and available. So you have that quality control built in. But for instance, for the insurance or for your industrial clients, how do you start ensuring that the underlying data that you're about to work with and extract value from is actually reliable?
Really good question on the data, and so we've now, I think we're 450 use cases that we've seen over the last 5 years. Every company is always worried about their data. Said, well, our data is not great. We're like, we know, like data isn't measured in like, we think of it in like scales of badness. Like there's never any good data. It's either your data is bad, horrible, or oh my gosh, how do you function as an organization, right? Yeah. And most of the time it's near that top, right? So the dirty secret in this industry is the majority of the time is spent getting data, cleaning data, normalizing data, putting it together. They would love to spend their entire day modeling and building cool elements of that. That's like at 10 to 20% of the job.
It's better when it's bad.
The data is better than it's bad?
It's better when it's bad. Because then you have a benchmark to grow from and produce qualified cleansed data.
Assuming we can get past the first quarter, because usually the CFO comes back and says, why aren't you producing results, that your data's crap? And so the bane of our existence is every company that says, hey, we're going to do an AI project, but after we spend 2 years on building out a brand new data warehouse, right? And to which we say, how do you know which data you should collect? Because Art's right, you want to start somewhere and get it. And if you have that mindset, if you know that the data always is if you come in thinking it's going to be bad, it's just saying, how do we optimize this? And the whole industry is going from, hey, we've got a big batch of data here, to how do we build business processes that can collect data and use these new technologies.
So that leads to my next question, and I apologize, I don't mean to be taking you off track. Does Alta ML also offer services to make different data repositories speak to each other? Or do you presuppose that they speak to each other?
Why don't we chat right after? Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
we do this. We try to stay out of the commodity data viz side of it, but yeah, I mean, this is a big part of what we do.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's call Google. Right? I mean, that's the ultimate, is to have all those data sets talking to each other. That's the
Yeah.
dream.
Well, and so there's types of data that's called a knowledge graph, that you're basically a database how describing how the data works, and essentially search and we'll get to a ChatGPT. Keep this. This is yeah. Okay. So I'm going to boil this down. After doing this for 5 years, here's 3 points if you're doing this from a high level in terms of where organizations mess up. I saw a job posting a little while ago. It said, I want 5 to 10 years experience and a PhD in machine learning. The person should have an MBA. It'd be nice if you had the PMP designation as well. That would be really good. You know, like that's 4 jobs. So when we think of a machine learning project, if it started off with the data scientist, you've already lost. You need the business side. Like a BA should be coming in, a business analyst should be coming in to actually shape the product and going, what are you trying to solve? Because data scientists are some of the most interesting, creative people I've ever met. They will optimize now literally to the last decimal point because they want to make it as good as possible. That's usually not economical. In order for a machine learning project to succeed, yeah, you need the geeks, you need the data science team, but that domain expertise is so critical. And it goes without saying, you need the data. So I was in a sales call with Mac earlier today. Say, hey, we really want to start off our on this team, and said, okay, well, what data do you have? And I said, oh, well, we don't have any data. I said, well, then you don't have an ML problem. It's like, well, we really think this would be cool to solve with AI. Can we just solve this problem with AI? Well, no, it's not like regular software development. You have to start. So you need the data, you need the domain expertise, and then you need the geeks, right? And ChatGPT is lowering the value, so you'll probably need less geeks now in the future than not. You're always going to need some of them. But it's a matter of putting together all these teams. When we structure a team, there's the business analysts, the design people, the regular software engineers, the data scientists, and all these pieces around it, and those that can actually translate. The business side that can translate to executives and build bridges across different parts of the organization. I've kind of already beat this at, start with the business problem. For those who know this cartoon, any Art probably knows this, if any other geeks in the room, you recognize this cartoon strip, but I won't read over the cartoon for it, but it really is, the biggest problem is that over the last few years, CEOs have said, it's usually the boards, right? It's like, Jerry's on the board and he's the chair and he says, where's our AI strategy? What's going on here? And then the CEO goes, CTO, why aren't we doing more AI? Do some AI. And they go, shit, we don't have any team. And then they start going, well, let's do an AI project just for the sake, because Jerry, the chair wants an AI project. Let's get this done, right? This came right from the top, right? And why does the chair say to do it? Well, because all the other chairs, they get together and they say, like, well, what's your AI strategy? You're like, I don't know. Like, well, are you doing AI? Like, AI is like teenage sex, right? Everyone's talking about it, but no one's doing it. Forget AI. Don't do AI. Start with your strategy and going, can data inform or accelerate our business strategy? Make small bets. We would rather have 10 $100,000 projects than one big $1 million project. This is very iterative in nature. That whole data problem, once you don't know how bad the data is on the level of really bad to super shitty bad. Like, you don't know that until you pop the hood and you actually start working with it. So the life cycle of an ML project is kind of, you start with the problem, you define what you think the economic impact is, you look at the data, you kind of measure back and forth, it's this kind of constant balancing act. Do we actually have something? And the main job is spending as little as possible before you really go down that path of putting in the permanent data pipelines and you put that project into production. I can't guarantee any company that project A or project B will be successful. But I know if we do enough projects and we look at enough use cases across a variety of time that portfolio will be profitable over time. We've seen enough, I say that after making every mistake in the book over the last 5 years, right? After kind of 400 something use cases and 90 clients, like we've literally made every mistake in the book. And so now it's a matter of, this is the key principle, because most people, most organizations, they want to take their standard project methodology. Here's how we run projects. This is our project thing, we've got it done. So what happens then is they go in, they put the initial budget, and you don't know how long it's going to take because of what I've just described here. And once you go to put into pilot, then you got to go back to legal. And then legal's got to put it, so it just doesn't work because you can't plan this like an ERP project. You can't plan this like typically. You need to think of it more like an R&D. It needs to be more iterative if you want to have success. Okay. So what we've covered so far, we've gone over the alphabet soup. AI means nothing. Umbrella term that means nothing. We're really talking about ML and whatever, all those other terms that hopefully you've already forgotten. It's some form of ML, deep learning, something else, right? It's starting with the business problem first. This is not just a matter of the data science and the tech. Really, this is using prediction to optimize business processes. So now over the last 2 months, everyone's talking about AI because of ChatGPT. So let's take a deep dive into what ChatGPT is and what it really means. Before jumping, I'm going to start off with Mr. Diamandis here. I love this quote. Yeah. By the end of the decade, there's 2 types of businesses. Those who fully utilize AI and those who will be out of business. That's my self-serving. Those of us in the business, we kind of like this one. So those of you who don't know, Peter Diamandis, X-Prize, big time thinker on this. I think what's also true here is that AI will not replace your profession, but someone using AI will replace one who won't. So in legal, AI is not going to get rid of lawyers. But lawyers who use AI will replace those who don't. Internally, one of our, basically 2IC, actually, she's on the board, Celia, sent something on, she's on the board of the chamber here, on our team, sent a note around to the executive about how if CEOs aren't using ChatGPT and these new technologies, they're going to be left behind. Because we think of this like almost akin to back in 50 years ago when you only had secretaries and doing this work. Well, the secretaries weren't replaced by by technology. They were replaced by the bosses that became more productive and did different things. What CEO doesn't type now, right? It's infallible. So what does that mean for this technology that makes it more usable going forward? There's one more piece of terminology that you need to pick up before you get into ChatGPT, and that's a large language model. So remember that NLP, that natural language processing? So a large language model is a type of NLP. Essentially, it's a really, really big natural language processing model. So think of it as reading, summarizing, basically extracting out information from text. What's interesting is you can understand data. So when you talk into your phone and say, hey Siri, I'd like to do search for this, that's using NLP. It's translating audio to text, right? It's just taking that way. What's changed now is this generative AI side. So we're taking and now generating new content because we can summarize and understand and build these really, really big models. And we're talking billions and billions of different variables. They're now actually producing output that sometimes sounds like a human wrote it. So what is ChatGPT? A lot of you have tried it, so for those who haven't, though, and aren't aware, so this is based upon a large language model. So it's called, the original back in the time it came out with GPT 3.5. Essentially, what we're doing is in the back end, we've got this huge language model off this chat interface in the front end that uses, remember that reinforcement learning? Remember that little town called Edmonton, right? Well, it's using reinforcement learning to kind of learn and adapt. And that's that chat back and forth. And so by building on this core building blocks of this massive language model, it essentially is trained on the entire internet. And it's spitting out, and what it's doing when you type in something to ChatGPT, it's trying to predict what you want. Like everything, it's still a prediction. Has anybody ever used Google Translate? And you type in Google Translate, and it's like there's mistakes, and then you type in more, and it kind of fixes up top. So that NLP model, as it gets more data, it's getting more accurate with the prediction. It is literally in Google Translate just using a prediction, it's a prediction like any other type of AI. Okay, and this is probably the most important slide. There's a lot of really, really amazing things about ChatGPT. And I think the use cases when it comes to how this is going to affect marketing, how this helps people who are English as a second language, being able to actually create first drafts of content is kind of crazy. When it's almost spooky what's out there. But ChatGPT has no idea if what it's saying is true. And I know you already all knew that, right? Because I've done this presentation a few times right now, and so everyone's aware of it. But let me just repeat that for a second. As you work with ChatGPT, as it gives you an answer, it has no idea what the ground truth is. It literally doesn't know if what it's saying is completely accurate or if it's just making shit up. So, does this matter if you're asking it to write a limerick in the form of the Beatles or Kanye? Well, no, like there's no right. I mean, it's actually pretty amazing what it does there because it sounds a whole lot like the Beatles when you type in something like that. And we've all seen the examples of that now that are being sent around in terms of what's being done. When I ask my lawyer for an opinion on something, I do expect it to be correct, or at least directionally correct. When there's a diagnosis for cancer, you better be damn sure that that's going to be correct. So what we've done here is we've exposed what's happening behind the scenes in AI. Actually, it's funny. Google and Facebook actually had very similar models going in the back end, but they weren't ready to release it yet because they were worried about the reputational damage. And you'll notice that when Google rushed out to catch up to OpenAI, mistakes were made and they shaved $100 billion of their market cap off in one day. So I'm not saying this to be negative or to poo-poo ChatGPT. This moment, you should think of this similar to the release of the iPhone. This is a groundbreaking moment where now all of a sudden the public is seeing what is coming, what is possible. Like the iPhone came out in 2008, right? It was brought together. There was actually nothing new on the iPhone, right? Like all the technology was there. It's just genius in terms of design and putting together all these pieces for that bandwidth to mobile and all these things kind of came together to actually say like, hey, we can create this new device. Similarly, deep learning wasn't invented by OpenAI. Reinforcement learning wasn't. It's not like they invented the chat. We've had crappy chatbots for a long period of time. But it was and is truly amazing how they put this together in a way that all of a sudden, and by the way, had hundreds of millions of dollars of training because it's very, very, very expensive to train these models and then to release it. Some estimate tens to hundreds of millions a day are being spent on ChatGPT. They needed that $10 billion investment from Microsoft. Art?
So I think I know what the answer is, but it's worth discussing. How is the fact that you can't tell, or ChatGPT itself doesn't know if it's correct, and therefore you, the reader, can't trust it? How's that any different than typical Google search right now that is targeted towards you with your political persuasions or your geographic location? You can't believe any of that either.
Totally valid point. Totally valid point. And some would say like, hey, you know what, this is already happening on social media. And maybe
or media in general.
Fair enough. And I think it's a very valid point, right? This could just be, an evolution of like, what it. I guess, and the example here, I know it's in a small screenshot here, so just I'll read off, and here's why I think it's a little bit different than search. It's that the confidence that it has in giving you that answer. You know that a search is coming from a bunch of people, and okay, maybe you trust the New York Times or maybe you don't, right? But like, Google is linking off to other sources, right? And it's buyer beware. So on this right side, who is the 44th president of the United States? It's Barack Obama, right? Who's the 45th president? Hillary Clinton. Well, everyone in the room here pretty knows that Hillary Clinton wasn't the 45th president of the United States. So this is what data scientists would call a hallucination, right? Like that, it's incorrect.
Is that real world?
That's a real life example, right? Now you can talk about and we can get into the liberal bias versus, or who knows the reason for that. But like, I think what's different, Art, is that it's putting this forward as a fact, right? And you know, other people have tricked us into saying, I'd like to have the biography of, and they invented Bloomberg von Bluppenden or whatever, right? And they invented, actually, it was funny, it was some Dutch name that they put it, right? And it gave back an answer because it said, it should look like this, and so I think it's this, and so it had to give an answer. So what ChatGPT, at this point, it doesn't ask why you want to know the answer to that question. When we have an employee that says, hey, you know what, I really want to here's my approach to solve it. Whoa, take a step back. What are you trying to solve? So this is an absolutely amazing tool. It's groundbreaking, but we need to understand this, and we need our kids. What happens if your kids are going on ChatGPT and they're just cutting and pasting this thing and putting it through? Like it's not necessarily factual. Now, it might be down the road, but as of today, and I know you're saying, well, they could just copy and paste from the internet. Fair enough, right?
Well, but there is no truth out there right now. Tell me what the truth is.
Well, now we're getting to a philosophical debate here.
Right? There is no truth. Where would you get it?
I mean...
people in this room, where would you get the truth from?
I mean, the current Prime Minister of Canada is Justin Trudeau. That's, whether we like it or not, that's a fact, right? And, you know, the 45th president was not Hillary Clinton. So there is truth to that. I mean, we're not talking about subjectivity and we're not talking about climate change. There are facts. Like, there are facts still in the world, I hope. Anyway.
So it looks like it's telling you that you got the research from some place there. It says, if you know where the research is, well, I can't give you a bibliography of where it was. And if you know, one's a troll and one's a college. Then you get an idea.
And so this is now a big part of it in terms of where the direction it's going, right? So I share this just saying, like, most people don't realize that it has no idea what the ground truth is, what the truth is, right? Because we've created models of tens of billions of variables, and what ChatGPT is really good at summarizing and generalizing content and coming up with what it thinks you want to hear. And a lot of the time, it's damn good, right? You want to write a cover letter for a resume? It's really, really good. It can save you tons of time putting that piece in, and I'm sure you, with the number of hands, we've all experimented in this way. So this is not to take away from the utility, but just as the iPhone, when that first came out, it enabled Uber to be built on top of that platform. And you'll notice today, ChatGPT, OpenAI is announcing that you can actually build on top of this, right? So they're trying to create a walled garden and saying, hey, we've spent the hundreds of millions of dollars in AI. You don't have to. You can use AI, build applications on top of it. That's going to be one business opportunity going forward. Is this intelligence, though? No. ChatGPT, the whole idea, a lot of people talk about the Turing test of if you can be fooled into thinking that something's a human, then it's truly intelligent. Many would quibble with that definition. It does not reason or understand what it's saying. And so I just think this is a really important thing. It feels so... Did anybody see the New York Times article from when it hallucinated and told the reporter to leave his wife and date the chatbot or come and marry the chatbot? Right? So like, because again, it's trained on, well, it's trained to like, well, what, hey, should I leave my wife? And it gives you an answer, right? Well, and so they're trying to put these guardrails in place to make the sense now, but we can debate whether this, and you can talk to Richard Sutton, he's way better than myself. I'm just trying to solve boring business problems, right? We can talk about the philosophy of the singularity and what is intelligence. I mean, Rich literally spends his entire life trying to recreate intelligence, right? This is not it. Will it happen? You can't, I know this is small. This is in January, all the big breakthroughs that happened when being in the industry, it feels like the pace is just increasing at an exponential pace, right? There's breakthroughs happening every day now. ChatGPT was significant enough that Google went into panic mode. Google's like, holy crap, our entire business Like, Microsoft has spent billions of dollars trying to beat Google. How many of you really like using Bing, right? In one day, or in 1 week, let's call it, when the first 1 million users came after whatever, 4 days it was, all of a sudden the world said, the executives at Google said, we need to look at this. And again, they had a bunch of, but the issue as the incumbent is that they actually need to be correct. To Art's point here, then, they had legions of journalists go through and try to find all the hallucinations of their called BARD. So now this is the arms race. So ChatGPT's trained off everything in the past. So basically, if it's happened since 2021, ChatGPT actually doesn't know about it because they got all this data from the past and so trained based on it. So now Google is saying we're going to train this off of our current knowledge graph and the whole internet. So it's going to be this arms race from improvement to make it better. So these issues, and it might be that in 6 months you go, Cory, what you said about ground truth is, no longer, that's not an issue. Like actually, because Google went to, in the law, they're going to Google Scholar, and they actually know the law, and it's actually pretty damn good. So it actually does know the ground truth for this area and this area and this area, right? It could get to that point, and it could completely supplant search. But the more we understand about the underlying building blocks where this comes from, the more you can understand, where this has an opportunity for you versus where this might actually be a risk for your organization.
How long do you think Google was working on BARD?
I mean, but it's been worked out for years. It's just the budget for it. I don't think anybody knows. I don't have the answer to that question. But and now I did my first chat. I've done about a dozen ChatGPT presentations from January through February. GPT-4 is out now, right? So a magnitude larger than GPT 3.5, and the one stat that's going all around, it was in like the 10th percentile for the bar exam in the States, and now it's like now it's in the top 90th percentile, so it can completely pass the bar exam now. So just the magnitude of improvements in a variety of areas has gone up substantially. They're trying to increase safety to try and do that. Again, remember from all the breakthroughs in general, this is only going to get better. It's only going to create new areas of opportunity and risk. It's just understanding the fundamentals behind the technology so you can make a better decision because by next month this is going to be completely different. Next quarter for sure. Okay, that's me. So what we've covered here is we've talked about the alphabet soup of AI. Throw out the term AI, it's really scary. Think of it in terms of machine learning. Understand that this is building software that can adapt without being explicitly programmed. There's huge opportunity outside of Silicon Valley, but it means starting with the business problem. To do so, you need to have a team of people that actually understand the industry, because we're not building at this point, some form of superhuman intelligence. There are people trying to do that, but for the most part, what we're talking about in terms of machine learning is solving very specific business problems, making predictions in very specific areas. You already know more than 90% now of executives in terms of what's out there. It's scary. So we can get into the whole thing around ethics and responsible AI. There's a whole other area of it. But now with ChatGPT and this advance in how much natural language processing is progressing, we're building these LLMs, these big crazy things. Do you need ChatGPT for your business? No, not necessarily. Maybe, but I guarantee you that your industry will be affected by these large language models, right? So it's not about knowing about ChatGPT, it's about knowing about LLMs and knowing about all these pieces of the technology behind the scenes. Thanks very much for your time.
Cory,
Cheryl.
please tell me that the City of Edmonton has come to you and said, how can you help us? I can't imagine an organization that has more data and such a huge opportunity.
We do work. We have one of our projects is GovLab, where we've worked across the government of Alberta has set up an AI lab where we can work across ministries and municipalities, for a sandbox, so almost have that kind of private sector sort of speed with the massive data sets that are there. We do have a number of municipalities that have signed up that we cannot disclose who's a member of that. There's a lot of fear around AI and different groups, so I can neither confirm nor deny if the City of Edmonton and the City of Calgary are participating in GovLab. I cannot tell you that.
I hope to see future success from that lab.
I mean, and here's one thing I didn't touch on. So with the essay is dead. The essay has been used as the way we judge whether a student has learned a concept. Now, to Art's point beforehand, we've been cheating on essays for years, right? Like, this is nothing new. But this is like, you can't use that as the way that you agree. Now, if we embrace this, think from the educational system, if we embrace using this as a tool, like at some point we started using calculators and use that as part of it. So if you could say, listen, we want you to learn critical thinking, you know, you're going to have to use ChatGPT or whatever's out there. You're going to have to use this AI in the long run. Can we figure out different ways of grading students and so forth versus being like